Hi, I am Goodlow Napier uh, with Inner Entertainment. Sure, give me a second. Um, I always have to do that because I've done something wrong. Inner Entertainment. Sure, hold on. That was what I'm not supposed to do. Okay, I think I got it right. I always have to do that because I've done something wrong. Okay, now let's get it off. There. Thank you. All right. Yeah, I want to talk tonight a little bit about the sober truth and a problem. I just wrote a research paper on the effects of AA, group therapy, etc., etc. I'm not going to bore you with that one. I got 100% on the project, and it may go on to be published, which is it's pretty that it's kind of like when you work or something and you've got all your detractors here saying he doesn't know what he's talking about and so on and so on. You keep going and everybody's saying no man, you're wrong, you're an idiot, etc., etc. This is life. And it's normalized. There's always going to be a state of envy, and especially if you're challenging the masses. So I specifically want to talk tonight about a gentleman named Lance Dodds, MD. He is the former professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, and he's got so many more accolades. I put links to his pages in the website as he's written some really good books and obviously done some great research on what is or used to be called alcoholism and alcohol abuse disorder. And I just want to talk about that a little bit tonight because the way I look at alcohol use disorder is I look at it as a symptom of a larger disease, and I get argued on this all the time. According to the near 100-year-old model, you're looking at a lifetime condition, and they strongly want to call it a disease. I don't agree with this, and I have many reasons. I'm somebody who should, by all means, be sitting there saying, "This was not my fault that I drank myself to death. All the stupid things I did were not my fault. It was genetics. It was my dad's fault. It was something else." But the further I went along, and I did AA for a long time. I've been into several rehabs, and that wasn't working, and there had to be a reason behind it. And I explained it one day to a friend of mine as heartache and the loss of God, which there is very much truth to that. And I couldn't figure it out, but I had quite abusive childhood that was well hidden at that, and I just never dealt with it. And it comes around to 2003 or so, and both my parents are dead, and I realized that I didn't have any closure. I'll never have any closure now, and that's when I can basically really pinpoint when my drinking hit a I climbed Mount Everest when it came to drinking. I mean, I was drinking a 1.75 of Tito's vodka a day, and not eating, and hotel to hotel. Some people have heard this story many times. You can hear it all you'd like. Um, so what it ends up is, and this is, I'm basically into. I'm working on the downhill slide towards my master's now, and I don't know if I'll end up getting a doctorate in it or not. I probably will, just being me, because what fascinates me is the more and more I started having questions, the more and more I learned to do research and become data literate. And it's a fascinating thing when you look at the actual numbers and all this. Um, like, sorry, I'm wearing my contacts, so I'll have trouble reading this. But uh, I forgot to take my contacts out. Um, okay. When we're looking at AA, for example, and this is directly from Lance Dodd's research, um, uh, in the book, he describes stunning facts about the current national treatment approach for addiction. AA has a success rate between 5 and 10%. An exhaustive scientific review by the prestigious Cochrane Collection of all AA studies over 40 years found even worse results, concluding that no experimental studies unequivocally demonstrated the effectiveness of AA in treating addiction. Practically no studies that support AA meet ordinary scientific standards, and all suffer from serious scientific errors. Sorry. Most cover only part of a short time of the lifelong condition, or they are applied by a failure to account for selective bias. And they base their data on self reports without independent verification, or they commit the grave error of uh, discarding data that doesn't meet their conclusions or their narrative. And that's a huge problem in any kind of psychological or psychology research, is that there is a lot of bias. And let's say you're doing an actual research study, and uh, you want to look at alcohol use disorder um, in Kentucky, and you only sample from Lexington, Kentucky. So you leave out all of southeastern Kentucky and even Louisville, but most of the rural areas are left out. So it's never going to give you a good view of what alcohol use disorder looks like in the state. And a lot of people do that. It's called convenient research, and it happens a lot. And I'm really big on um, this, because if AA, and AA promotes AA, and people that are in AA for a while develop a groupthink type mentality. Now, that's only the 10%, 5 to 10%. So, think about that, and you think about the talk about the 90% that didn't make it through. So you've got AA, NA, all their cousins, and it's simply a bad treatment that does harm to the 90% who cannot make use of such programs and are led to believe that they're the ones who are failures because the program is never wrong. That's a huge issue right there that I haven't really talked about before, but it's that the program's not wrong. Now, you go on to this, and you've got roughly 95% of the recovery centers and rehabs in America that use the AA model. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And, I spoke about this other day. I read a short little blurb on a reel. Uh, but the definition of disease itself with alcoholism, as it was called. I mean, this was in 1956 when it was determined to be a disease, and or 46. I should probably know that better than that. But the point is it was very self-serving. Okay, once it was labeled a disease, doctors were able to bill insurance companies. Well, why wouldn't they want to call it a disease? So then, immediately following that, hospitals were able to use the same terminology for long term treatment, and thus bill the insurance companies. And even though that's true, and a lot of doctors at the time did want to be able to build insurance companies, you've only got 11% of the doctors in America, doctors, physicians, and more, who really hate to call it disease, who hate to treat it like a disease. And I agree. I think it's very much a symptom of a larger issue, a trauma, a depression, um, and more. I mean, almost, I've seen very few people in addiction who do not come from some kind of trauma and or inherent anxiety disorder or something like that, and that's the problem. If we quit treating it as it's a disease, if we quit using the same model for everybody, I've harped on this for over a year, but AA can be very enabling. I'm not saying all of AA is bad, and I'm never going to say that. It can be helpful for maintenance. It can be helpful for you to get with that group that may be like minded in the fact that they don't want to drink. The horror side of that is, I know even at one of the larger um, rehab facilities in this part of Kentucky, central Kentucky, they had to quit having meetings and NA meetings because of the fact people were finding people to use with and people were finding people to sell to, and that's just the truth of it. And so you're always going to have that. You've got a uncontrolled group acting as unlicensed counselors who really don't understand the data and the research behind it. And, something like cross occurring orders or co occurring disorders, a dual diagnosis. Um, Many times when someone is suffering from alcohol or substance use, they're also suffering from another mental health disorder, which is a statement to the co occurring disorder as a co occurring disorder. The mental health disorder could be the reason some people use alcohol, or it could be a side effect of the alcohol use creating another disorder, a depression disorder, an anxiety disorder. I know for me, and this is just speaking it like it is, um, I would drink and drink, sober up, and then it was like, what has my life turned into? The depression's 10 times worse because alcohol is a depressant, no matter what. And so you go into that, and what do you turn around and do? When I started learning the hair of the dog, as they call it, that's day drinking or waking up to get rid of your hangover and drinking. I was waking up to get rid of a depression. And especially in the last 6 months of my time with my relationship with booze, I was, I mean, it was out of control. So that caused an addiction, which can, in many ways, that can be considered a disease because it can be fatal. And that's where the definitions get so screwed up. Where alcoholism's they considered it fatal when they labeled it as a disease. But the detox can be treated and cured. And what I'm looking for in all the research I've done and have been doing is, it's been a few years since I drank. I don't have cravings. I don't even get tempted, man. I don't get triggered. Nothing bothers me. And I strongly believe, I theorize that it's because I dealt with the underlying issues that alcohol was fueling, and that has saved my life. And as I mentioned earlier, my heartache and the loss of God was a huge issue to me, and will always be. But that's where I'm at, and I'm working hard on this. And I just need you to understand that everybody and their brother and sister's brother, and so on and so on, recovery is becoming a very monetized situation where you've got, for example, and no offense to everybody who gets offended, it doesn't bother me that you do. You've got, I keep seeing on Facebook, all these people get straight out of rehab and they get peer support certificates, which is CPSS, Certified Peer Support Specialist. And these people are being left to counsel those in treatment. And where peer support's just supposed to be there, somebody to listen, not dull advice, and things like that. So it's a very thin line. And it's also, what it does is, you've got a lot of these recovery centers who are using peer support in place of counselors because they can pay them $9 and $10 an hour, for people who just feel blessed to have a job and be part of the process. But it can also be very entangling and dangerous to put people who are not ready into those positions. If you're talking somebody who's been sober 30, 60 days, they're not ready to support each other. I'm sorry, their peers, because haven't learned. Um, uh, they haven't learned themselves again yet. It took me a long time to fully and functionally learn who Goodlow was, and when I started, school, I didn't expect to be a 4.0 student, well, 3.97. I didn't expect to be as successful at research and statistics as I have been. And learning data literacy it makes a huge difference when you understand not what the leader of some little cultish rehab's telling you, um, uh, at all, because I mean you're regurgitating the same point over and over again. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. You do the 12 steps. I think the 12 steps are utterly ridiculous, and I think if anything can trigger, um, and I don't mean trigger an alcohol here. What I'm talking about when you're doing these 12 steps, mentally triggering your anxiety to a point that, yeah, you might be tempted to get rid of that with a drink. So um, I don't know. I'll share some of my actual work myself, but in the meantime, I strongly suggest anybody check out Lance Dode's, drlancedodes.com, Dr. LANCEDODES.com. It's very interesting and something everybody should check out for sure. He's helpful because he's putting a new twist on it, which honestly, it really needs to be done. If you think of all the people that do NA, do AA, and do rehab, and people who aren't making it out. I mean, I can in the last week I can think of three more, bless their souls, who didn't make it by following those programmatic rules. I suggest when somebody gets out of rehab that they start working on their own emotional intelligence. And that's another thing you can research developing emotional intelligence, and that's going to do nothing but help you. And that's it for me this week. I've got to get over to said I would do one on Instagram. Um, And I'm going to do a devotion, which I haven't got to do in a while. But the way it works is, I'll leave this string hanging down there, and there's nothing holding any pages. So I just kind of, whatever page it goes to is what I try and read. All right. The other day I was working on my computer. I had three projects in the work. This is called Don't Minimize, Delete. Day 310 in the Celebrate Recovery daily devotional, which Celebrate Recovery is an offshoot of AA, but I still, this devotional book is more personal because it's written by hundreds of people who anonymously threw in their 2 cents, and it's a good read to get a better understanding. Um, The other day I was working on my computer. I had three projects in the work, so I would minimize one project's documents and move to the second. Then I'd minimize that one, move to the third. Third icon at the bottom of the screen. Let me know that my documents were close at hand. Two of the prospects were work related, and the third was a fun project. I was trying to stay focused on the important task, but that that fun project kept whispering to me, "You don't need to work on those other two. Open me. You know you want to. Come on, come on. Have some fun. Open me." Finally, the fun project became so distracting that I had to delete it from the screen. I'm pretty sure that is what the writer of Hebrews meant when he said, "Get rid of those things that so easily entangle us." Most of the time, it's not enough to just minimize. Sometimes we have to delete old habits and hangups. Um, and I'm really having trouble reading. Sorry, when I wear the contacts, I can't see up close. Um, there's a prayer for this one. Heavenly Father, thank you for helping me uh, clear the screen of the distractions that kept me from what you have given me. That's pretty cool. Help me to focus as I do on where. Oh, help me to focus on what is pleasing to you. Okay, in Jesus' name, amen. So sorry about that reading, but I can't help it. I forgot to take my contacts out. But that's it for me. Happy trails to everybody. I hope everybody has a good week. For all those who are suffering, as I know we've lost a plethora. Just in my little world, we've lost a plethora of people in the last few weeks, and that's no joke. And I pray for them all, and those are hurting. And I think about it every time before I eat a meal. I'm so grateful for that meal, the roof over my head, and so much more. So be well, be good to one another, and we'll talk to y'all next week, maybe.